Alexander Monroe, a 28-year-old heir to the prestigious restaurant chain Fiance'S Flavors, sat in his luxurious apartment, staring out the window with a look of sadness on his face. He had just ended another failed relationship, one more in a long list of heartbreaks. Alexander was a handsome man with a promising future, but it seemed his success and wealth only attracted women interested in his money and social status. Deep in thought, Alexander didn't notice the arrival of his best friend, David Turner. David, a successful lawyer, walked into the apartment with a worried expression. "What's up, man? More trouble with the ladies?" David asked as he sat on the couch next to Alexander. Alexander sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "David, I'm tired of women only seeing me for my money. Is there no one who could love me for who I am and not what I have?" he lamented. David thought for a moment. Then his face lit up with an idea. What if you pretended to be a regular guy, Get a normal job and meet someone who doesn't know anything about your wealth. That way, you could see if they love you for who you truly are. Alexander looked at him skeptically. "Me? Working as an ordinary man? I don't know, David. I'm not sure I could pull it off." "Come on, Alexander. What do you have to lose? If it doesn't work out, you can always go back to your old life. But if it does, you might find true love," David insisted. Alexander fell silent, considering his friend's proposal. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but the idea of someone loving him for who he was, not for his money, was tempting. Finally, with a determined look, Alexander turned to David and nodded. "All right, I'll do it. I'll pretend to be a regular guy and get a job at one of my own restaurants, but I'll need your help to pull it off." David grinned and patted his friend's back. "Count on me, brother. I'll help you with everything. Together, we'll find the perfect woman for you." With a plan in mind and the determination to find true love, Alexander embarked on the biggest adventure of his life, unaware that his destiny was about to change forever. At one of his own restaurants, Alexander looked at himself in the mirror, barely recognizing his reflection. He had swapped his expensive suit for worn-out jeans and a simple t-shirt. His normally slick-back hair now fell in natural waves across his forehead. It was his first day as a waiter at Fiance'S Flavors, the flagship restaurant of his chain. With his heart racing, Alexander entered through the back door, avoiding anyone who might recognize him. He made his way to the manager's office, where he met Emily Johnson, a 25-year-old woman with brown hair and honey-colored eyes. Emily looked up from some paper she was reviewing and gave him a warm smile. "You must be Alexander, our new waiter," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Emily, the restaurant manager. Welcome to Fiance'S Flavors." Alexander shook her hand, feeling a spark of electricity as he touched her soft skin. "Pleased to meet you, Emily. I'm excited to start working here," he replied, trying to hide his nerves. Emily handed him a uniform and directed him to a place where he could change. "Once you're ready, come find me, and I'll introduce you to the rest of the team," she instructed. Alexander put on the uniform, feeling strange in the waiter's clothes. He looked at himself in the mirror one last time, took a deep breath, and stepped out to face his new challenge. Emily led him to the kitchen, where the head chef, a robust man with an impressive mustache, greeted him with a gruff, "So you're the new guy. I hope you're ready to work hard," he said, handing him a tray. Throughout the day, Alexander worked hard to adjust to his new role. He took orders, served dishes, and cleaned tables, all under Emily's watchful eye. Despite some initial stumbles, Alexander proved to be a dedicated worker, attentive to the customers. In a quiet moment, Emily approached him with a smile. "You're doing really well for your first day, Alexander. Keep it up, and you'll be an expert in no time," she encouraged. Alexander smiled back, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Thank you, Emily. I appreciate your support. I know I still have a lot to learn, but I'm willing to give it my best." As the day drew to a close, Alexander realized that despite the physical exhaustion, he felt more alive than he had in years. For the first time in a long while, he was doing something for himself without relying on his name or fortune. Unbeknownst to him, he had taken the first step on a path that would lead him to discover true love and challenge everything he thought he knew about himself and life. With each passing day, Alexander grew more comfortable in his role as a waiter. He developed a routine and learned to handle the job's demands with more ease. But what truly motivated him was the growing friendship he was developing with Emily. Emily was an extraordinary woman. Alexander discovered that she wasn't just beautiful on the outside, but also possessed an inner beauty that made her shine. She was intelligent, compassionate, and had a sense of humor that made him laugh even on the toughest days. One day, during a break, Alexander and Emily found themselves in the staff room. Emily was frowning in concentration over some documents. Alexander approached her with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Looks like you need a break," he said, offering her a cup. Emily looked up and smiled gratefully. "Thanks, Alexander. You're very thoughtful. These numbers are dancing in front of my eyes." They sat together, enjoying their coffee and each other's company. Alexander marveled at Emily's passion as she spoke about the restaurant, her dreams of expanding the business and creating new dishes to delight the customers. "You know, Emily, I think you're an incredible woman," Alexander said, surprising himself with his sincerity. "The way you care about this place and the people here is admirable." Emily blushed, lowering her gaze to her cup. "Thank you, Alexander. That means a lot coming from you. Ever since you joined, you've brought a positive energy to the team. Everyone has noticed how dedicated and kind you are." Alexander's heart raced at her words. He was used to receiving compliments, but Emily's felt different, more genuine. As days turned into weeks, Alexander and Emily became inseparable. They spent their breaks laughing and sharing stories. Alexander learned about Emily's childhood, how she had struggled to make it in life, and her determination to succeed. Gradually, Alexander realized he was falling hopelessly in love with Emily. He loved her strength, her kindness, and the way she viewed the world. With her, he could be himself, without pretense or expectations. But as his feelings grew, so did the weight of his secret. Every time Emily spoke about honesty and trust, Alexander felt a pang of guilt. He knew he would have to reveal the truth to her eventually, but he feared that doing so might mean losing her forever. One evening, as they were closing the restaurant together, Emily turned to Alexander with a look of affection in her eyes. "Alexander, I want you to know that you've become someone very special to me. I've never met anyone like you," she said softly. Alexander felt his heart swell with love and, at the same time, shrink with fear. He took Emily's hands in his, looking deeply into her eyes. "Emily, I feel the same way, but there's something I need to tell you, something about me that I've been hiding." Before he could continue, the restaurant phone rang, breaking the moment. Emily apologized and rushed to answer it, leaving Alexander with the words stuck in his throat and a knot in his stomach. He knew he couldn't keep living a lie, but how could he tell Emily the truth without risking everything? It was a dilemma that would haunt him in the days to come as his love for Emily grew and his secret became an even heavier burden. Despite the deepening connection between Alexander and Emily, she struggled with her own internal demons. Emily had had a difficult childhood, marked by her father's abandonment and financial hardships. She had learned to distrust men, especially those who seemed too good to be true. Alexander, with his sweetness and attentiveness, had begun to break down the walls Emily had built around her heart. But still, there were moments when doubts and fears took hold of her. One day, while they were working at a private event in the restaurant, Emily watched as Alexander interacted with the customers. His natural charm and ability to make everyone feel special were evident. Women were drawn to him like moths to a flame, and Emily felt a pang of jealousy. "It's so easy for him," she thought, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. "He probably has dozens of women chasing him. Why would he be interested in someone like me, with all my problems and complicated past?" "You okay? You seem a bit distracted," he said. Emily forced a smile, trying to hide her. Alexander, unaware of Emily's thoughts, approached her with a bright smile. "Hey, aren't her turmoil? I'm fine, just a bit tired. It's been a long day." Alexander looked at her with concern, but didn't press the issue. Instead, he offered to help finish cleaning and closing the restaurant. As they worked side by side in the empty kitchen, Emily couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. With trembling hands, she dropped a plate she was drying, shattering it on the floor. "Emily!" Alexander hurried to her side. taking her hands in his. "What's wrong? Please talk to me." With tears streaming down her face, Emily finally opened up. She told Alexander about her past, about how she had been hurt and betrayed by those she had trusted. She spoke of her fear of opening up, of being vulnerable again. Alexander listened intently, his heart breaking at the pain he saw in her eyes. When Emily finished, he pulled her into a comforting embrace. "Emily, you are the strongest and bravest woman I've ever met," Alexander whispered, gently stroking her hair. "You've been through so much, yet you keep fighting, you keep loving. Your past doesn't define you. You're so much more than that." Emily clung to him, finding solace in his strength and warmth. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly seen and understood. From that moment on, something changed between them. Emily began to lower her defenses, allowing herself to trust Alexander in a way she had never trusted anyone before. And Alexander, in turn, was in awe of Emily's resilience and inner beauty. Together, they began to heal Emily's past wounds. Alexander encouraged her to seek therapy, to talk about her experiences, and to learn to forgive herself. With Alexander's unconditional support, Emily began to blossom, to believe in herself and her worth. And so, amidst pots and pans, shared laughter and tears, Emily and Alexander found themselves falling more deeply in love. It was a love born of understanding, acceptance, and a willingness to fight together against the demons of the past. Yet, one obstacle still loomed over them: Alexander's secret. As their relationship deepened, the guilt and fear in Alexander's heart grew. He knew he would have to face the truth soon, but for now, he clung to the happiness he had found with Emily, dreading the day it might all come crashing down. With each passing day, the love between Alexander and Emily grew stronger. They had built an unbreakable bond founded on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. Alexander marveled at Emily's transformation. Under his love and support, she had flourished, becoming more confident and happy. Her laughter, once rare, now filled the restaurant, spreading joy to everyone around. One day, after a particularly busy shift, Alexander and Emily decided to take a walk in the nearby park. They strolled hand in hand, enjoying the cool evening breeze and each other's company. Sitting on a bench, watching the sunset, Alexander knew the time had come. He couldn't keep hiding his true identity from the love of his life. "Emily," he began, taking her hands in his, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you for a while now, something about me that I've kept secret." Emily looked at him curiously, but without fear. "You can tell me anything, Alexander. I trust you," she said. Alexander took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "The truth is, I'm not who you think I am. I'm Alexander Monroe, the owner of Soul's Flavors. I pretended to be a waiter because I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I am, not for my money or my position." Emily fell silent, processing this revelation. Alexander held his breath, terrified of her reaction. But then Emily smiled, a soft, understanding smile. "Alexander, I already knew," she said. Alexander stared at her in shock. "You knew? But how?" Emily let out a gentle laugh. "I suspected it from the beginning. The way you spoke, your knowledge of the business. It didn't match the story of a simple waiter. But I didn't say anything because I saw the kindness in you. I saw the man I fell in love with, regardless of his name or fortune." Alexander felt his heart swell with love and relief. He pulled Emily into his arms, kissing her tenderly. "I love you, Emily," he declared, looking into her eyes. "You're the woman of my dreams, my partner in life. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side." With his heart pounding, Alexander knelt before her, pulling out a small velvet box from his pocket. "Emily Johnson, will you do me the honor of marrying me? I promise to love you, respect you, and be your partner in all the adventures life brings." Tears of joy filled Emily's eyes as she threw herself into his arms. "Yes, Alexander, yes, I'll marry you." They kissed under the golden glow of the setting sun, their hearts beating in perfect harmony. They had found true love, a love built on acceptance, honesty, and understanding. But their happiness was soon to be tested. Alexander knew he would have to face his father and reveal his relationship with Emily and his desire to marry her. He feared his father's reaction, but with Emily by his side, he felt strong enough to face anything. What Alexander didn't know was that his father, Robert Monroe, was already on his way to the restaurant, determined to put an end to what he considered a childish whim. The next morning dawned bright and clear, but Alexander couldn't shake the feeling of unease that followed him. He decided to go to the restaurant early, hoping to have a moment alone to think about how to approach the conversation with his father. But when he entered his office, he found himself face to face with Robert Monroe, who was sitting there with a stern expression. "Father," Alexander said in surprise. "What are you doing here?" Robert stood up from the chair, his imposing figure dominating the room. "The question is, what are you doing here, Alexander? Playing waiter in your own restaurant? What were you thinking?" Robert's voice was cold and authoritative. Alexander felt his stomach churn, but he stood firm. "Father, I can explain," but Robert cut him off. "There's nothing to explain, Alexander. You've been neglecting your responsibilities, jeopardizing our company's future. And for what? To chase a ridiculous fantasy with an employee." Alexander's blood boiled at the mention of Emily. "Don't you dare speak about her like that, Father. Emily is not a fantasy. I love her, and I'm going to marry her." Robert's face turned red with fury. "Marry a simple restaurant manager? I won't allow it, Alexander. You have a duty to this family, to our legacy." At that moment, Emily entered the office, worried about the commotion. Seeing Robert, she paled, understanding the situation immediately. Robert turned to her, his voice dripping with disdain. "So, you're the woman who has been distracting my son. Do you think you can worm your way into our family, get your hands on our fortune?" Alexander stepped between his father and Emily, his voice shaking with rage. "Enough, Father. I won't let you talk to the woman I love like that. Emily isn't after our money. She loves me for who I am." Emily, tears in her eyes but her head held high, spoke firmly. "Sir, I love your son. I love Alexander, the man, not the heir. I never cared about his money." Robert let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Love? What does a woman like you know about love? This is just an illusion, a passing fancy. And you, Alexander, have disappointed this family. If you insist on continuing this nonsense, I'll be forced to take drastic measures." With that, Robert stormed out of the office, leaving Alexander and Emily in stunned silence. Alexander pulled Emily into his arms, her body trembling. "I'm so sorry, my love. I never wanted you to be caught up in this, but I won't give you up, no matter what my father says or does." Emily looked at him, love and determination shining through her tears. "We're in this together, Alexander. We'll fight for our love, no matter the obstacles." Yet, as they held each other, a sense of foreboding settled in their hearts. They knew Robert wouldn't stop at anything to tear them apart, and the battle for their love was only just beginning. What they didn't know was how far Robert was willing to go, and how his actions would test the strength of their love and resolve to be together against all odds. The revelation of Alexander's true identity and the confrontation with Robert had left Emily in shock and confusion. She felt betrayed, deceived by the man she had given her heart to. Alexander tried to talk to her, to explain his motives, but Emily couldn't hear him. The pain was too raw, too overwhelming. "How could you do this to me, Alexander?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "How could you lie to me all this time?" Alexander reached for her hands, but she pulled away. "Emily, please let me explain. Everything I did for love. I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for my money or status." But Emily shook her head, the hurt transforming into anger. "Love? How can you talk about love when it was all based on a lie? How can I ever trust you now?" Before Alexander could respond, Emily ran out of the restaurant, leaving him standing there, heartbroken and desperate. The next days were a torment for both of them. Emily buried herself in work, trying to forget the pain, but her nights were filled with tears and memories of the happiness they had shared. Alexander, on his part, tried everything he could to speak to her, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but Emily avoided him, unable to face him. The tension in the restaurant was palpable. Their coworkers, who had once admired Alexander and Emily's relationship, now looked at them with pity and disapproval. Robert, hearing about the breakup, made no effort to hide his satisfaction. "I told you, Alexander," he scolded. "That woman was never right for you. It's time for you to return to your responsibilities and forget about this foolishness." But Alexander couldn't forget. He couldn't let go of Emily or the life they had dreamed of together. He knew he had made a mistake by lying, but his love was real. It was the most real thing he had ever felt. Desperate, Alexander showed up at Emily's apartment one night, pleading with her to hear him out. "Emily, please," he begged through the closed door. "I know I hurt you, and there's no excuse for what I did. But my love for you is real. Every moment we shared, every laugh, every touch, it was real. I can't lose you. I can't imagine my life without you." There was a long silence, and then, slowly, the door opened. Emily stood there, her eyes red and swollen, but with a spark of hope in her gaze. "Talk," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Tell me why I should believe you, why I should give you another chance." And so, standing at the threshold of her door, Alexander poured out his heart. He spoke of his fears, his insecurities, of how he had come to love her more than anything in the world. Emily listened, tears streaming down her face, as she felt the sincerity in Alexander's words, the love and regret in his voice. But trust, once broken, is not easily mended. Emily knew they would need time, that both of them would have to work to rebuild what they had lost. "I can't promise that everything will be the same," she said finally, taking Alexander's hands in hers. "But I'm willing to try, to take it one step at a time, because despite everything, I love you, Alexander. I love you." They embraced then, holding on to each other like survivors of a storm, knowing the road ahead wouldn't be easy. They would have to fight against Robert's prejudice and their own inner demons. But in that moment, in each other's arms, they found the strength to face whatever lay ahead. Their love had been tested, almost destroyed, but like a phoenix, it was ready to rise from the ashes, stronger and purer than ever before. In the days that followed, Alexander and Emily worked tirelessly to rebuild their relationship. They spent hours talking, sharing their fears and hopes, learning to trust each other again. Alexander knew he had a lot to make up for and began by being completely honest with Emily, sharing every detail of his life and his plans for the future. "I want us to be partners in everything," he told her, sincerity shining in his eyes. "In business, in life, in love. No more secrets, no more lies." Emily, moved by his honesty, began to open up again. Together, they started planning their future, a future in which they would run Soul's Flavors as a team, taking the restaurant to new heights. But the shadow of Robert still loomed over them. The Monroe patriarch had not given up his opposition to their relationship and was determined to do everything in his power to tear them apart. One day, while Alexander and Emily were at the restaurant, Robert made his move. He entered the establishment with a group of lawyers, demanding to speak to his son immediately. "Alexander," he said, his voice cold and commanding, "I warned you. If you don't end this ridiculous relationship, I'll be forced to take drastic measures." Alexander stood his ground, Emily by his side, their hands clasped in a gesture of unity. "Father, you can't control my life," Alexander said, his voice firm despite the fear he felt. "I love Emily, and she loves me. We're getting married, with or without your blessing." Robert laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. "You don't need my blessing, Alexander. But perhaps you'll need your inheritance, your position in the company. Because if you go through with this wedding, I'll disown you and leave you with nothing." Emily gasped, fear and worry evident on her face. But Alexander only squeezed her hand, his resolve unshakable. "If that's what you want, Father, so be it," he said. "I'd rather live a life of poverty with Emily than a life of wealth without her." Robert, stunned by his son's determination, turned and left the restaurant, his threats still hanging in the air. Alexander turned to Emily, taking her hands in his. "I'm not afraid, my love," he said, his voice soft but sure. "As long as I have you, I have everything I need. Emily, tears streaming down her face, embraced him tightly. We're in this together, Alexander. We'll overcome any obstacle as long as we have each other. In the days that followed, Alexander and Emily threw themselves into planning their wedding. They wanted a simple ceremony, surrounded by their closest friends and family. Meanwhile, Robert, furious at his son's defiance, used his influence to sabotage the restaurant. He canceled contracts, spread rumors, and did everything he could to ruin Soul's Flavors. But Alexander and Emily, along with their loyal employees, fought back. They worked long hours, came up with new menus, and attracted new customers with their dedication and passion. As their love and determination grew, something began to change in Robert. Seeing his son so happy, so committed, began to soften his hardened heart. Slowly, he started to question his actions. Was losing his son worth his pride and prejudice? One day, just before the wedding, Robert showed up at the restaurant. Alexander and Emily tensed, expecting another confrontation. But to their surprise, Robert approached them with tears in his eyes. "I've been a fool," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I let my pride and my prejudices blind me to what really matters. Your happiness, Alexander." He turned to Emily, taking her hands in his. "I misjudged you, Emily. I can see now how much you love my son, how happy you make him. I'm sorry for everything I've done. I hope you can both find it in your hearts to forgive me." Overwhelmed with emotion, Alexander and Emily embraced Robert. In that moment, the wounds of the past began to heal, and a new chapter of understanding and love began. The wedding was a joyous celebration. Alexander and Emily exchanged vows under an arch of flowers, surrounded by the love of their friends and family. Robert, with pride and happiness in his eyes, walked Emily down the aisle, knowing he had gained not only a daughter-in-law but a daughter. As Alexander and Emily danced their first dance as husband and wife, they knew their love had triumphed over every obstacle. They had learned that honesty, forgiveness, and understanding were the foundations of true love. And as they gazed into each other's eyes, lost in their happiness, they knew this was only the beginning of their love story, a story they would continue to write together every day of their lives. After the emotional wedding, Alexander and Emily embarked on their honeymoon. They chose a quiet coastal town, eager to spend time together and celebrate their new life as husband and wife. During those days, they explored the picturesque town, walked along the beach hand in hand, and enjoyed the delicious local cuisine. But more than anything, they cherished each moment, deepening their connection and talking about their dreams and future plans. One night, over a candlelit dinner at a cozy restaurant, Emily took Alexander's hand and looked at him with love in her eyes. "Alexander, there's something I've been thinking about," she began, her voice soft but serious. "I want Soul's Flavors to be more than just a restaurant. I want it to make a difference in the community." Alexander looked at her with curiosity, encouraging her to continue. "I've been thinking about starting a culinary training program for underprivileged youth," Emily explained. "We could teach them valuable skills, give them career opportunities, and maybe even help them open their own businesses one day." Alexander's heart swelled with pride and love. This was one of the many reasons he loved Emily: her generosity, her desire to help others. "That's a wonderful idea, my love," he said, squeezing her hand. "Let's do it. Let's use our success to give back, to make a difference." They returned from their honeymoon renewed and full of purpose. They immediately set to work on the training program, reaching out to local organizations and developing a curriculum. Robert, who had come to respect and admire Emily, offered his full support. He used his connections to secure funding and resources for the program. As the program took shape, Alexander and Emily witnessed incredible transformations. Young people who had once struggled to find their way began to thrive in the kitchen, discovering talents and passions they never knew they had. But their happiness was soon overshadowed by unexpected news. Emily discovered she was pregnant, but there were complications. The doctors warned that she would need complete bed rest to carry the pregnancy to term. Alexander, worried about his wife's health and their unborn child, insisted that Emily take a break from the restaurant. But Emily, stubborn and determined, refused to give up on their dream. "We can do this together," she insisted. "Our baby is strong, and so am I. I won't give up on our work, on our mission." Alexander, though reluctant, couldn't help but admire his wife's strength and determination. Together, they navigated the challenges of pregnancy, balancing the demands of the restaurant with the needs of their growing family. And when the day finally came, and their son was born healthy and strong, Alexander and Emily knew it had all been worth it. Looking at their little miracle, they were overwhelmed with a love deeper than they had ever imagined. They knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their story, a chapter filled with baby laughter, sleepless nights, and the incomparable joy of watching their son grow. Through it all, their love, forged in the fires of adversity, only grew stronger. They were a team in life and in love, and together, they knew they could face anything the future held. The years passed in the blink of an eye, and the little restaurant, Soul's Flavors, flourished under Alexander and Emily's leadership. Their culinary training program had become a model for success, with graduates opening their own successful businesses throughout the city. Their son, Robert, named in honor of the grandfather he had come to love, grew up surrounded by love and laughter. He could often be found in the restaurant kitchen, watching in awe as his parents created culinary magic. But as Robert grew, Alexander and Emily began to feel a longing for something more. They had spent years dedicated to their work and family, and though they had no regrets, they felt it was time for a change. One day, as they enjoyed a rare moment of quiet in their office, Alexander turned to Emily with a thoughtful look. "Do you remember when we first met, Emily?" he asked softly. "How all we wanted was to create something special, something that would touch people's lives?" Emily smiled, memories of those early days flooding her mind. "Of course I remember, my love. It's been an incredible journey." Alexander took her hand, his thumb gently stroking her palm. "I've been thinking, what if we shared that journey with others? What if we opened more restaurants, brought our training program to other cities?" Emily's eyes lit up with excitement. "Expand our reach? Touch even more lives? I love the idea, Alexander." And so, with Robert's blessing and the enthusiasm of their team, Alexander and Emily began working on their next chapter. They traveled across the country, looking for the perfect locations for their new restaurants. In every city, they made sure to partner with local organizations, creating opportunities for those who needed them most. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and difficulty, but Alexander and Emily had each other, and that was all they needed. Then one day, as they opened their 10th restaurant, Alexander and Emily looked at each other and knew they had done something extraordinary. They had built not just a successful business, but a legacy of love and generosity. They had proven that with hard work, passion, and the support of the ones we love, any dream is achievable. That night, as they sat on their balcony, looking up at the stars, Alexander turned to Emily, his love for her burning brighter than ever. "Thank you, Emily," he whispered, pulling her close. "Thank you for this journey, for your love, for everything." Emily smiled, her hand cradling his face. "No, Alexander. Thank you. Thank you for seeing past my fears, for fighting for our love. You've made my dreams come true." They kissed then, a kiss that held the promise of countless more to come, because they knew that no matter what, they would always have each other. Their story had begun with a lie, but had blossomed into a beautiful truth, a truth of love, second chances, and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. And as they looked forward to the future, to the many chapters still to be written, Alexander and Emily knew they could face anything together. Because their love, born in the kitchens of Soul's Flavors, was a testament to the transformative power of opening our hearts and daring to dream.